What if you could glimpse beyond the veil of death and return with a message straight from heaven? That's exactly what happened to Sarah, an ER nurse whose life took a shocking turn after a tragic accident. In a radiant heavenly realm, she encountered Jesus himself, felt divine love beyond words, and was shown 4 monumental events that will shape the world before his return. Sarah Coleman, a seasoned ER nurse, had spent more than a decade immersed in the stark realities of life and death. Her world revolved around science, hard facts, and the tangible. She had witnessed humanity at its best and worst, moments of devastating loss intertwined with acts of extraordinary courage and resilience. If anyone had told her that she would one day share a story about dying, meeting Jesus, and returning with a message for humanity, she would have thought it impossible. But on April 3rd, 2023, everything she thought she knew about life was turned upside down. That morning began like any other. Sarah had barely slept the night before, her mind racing with a swirl of thoughts after her son's soccer game. The endless to-do lists, the responsibilities, it was all too familiar. Hoping to clear her head, she laced up her running shoes and headed out for a jog before sunrise. The neighborhood was quiet, cloaked in the soft stillness of dawn. A light fog hovered over the streets, and the crisp morning air felt almost refreshing. At precisely 5:12 a.m., she glanced at her watch, unaware that those seconds would mark the last ordinary moment of her life. As she crossed a street, everything changed in an instant. A car, driven by someone distracted by their phone, came barreling toward her. The impact was swift and catastrophic. Sarah had no memory of the collision itself, only the overwhelming sensation of everything going dark. She expected silence, emptiness, and an end. Instead, she awoke to something she could never have imagined. The first thing Sarah noticed was the light. It wasn't like sunlight, nor was it artificial. It was alive, warm, and all-encompassing. It didn't just illuminate her surroundings. It filled her entire being with a sense of peace so profound, it defied explanation. Every fear, every worry, every burden she had ever carried melted away in an instant. It was as if the weight of the world had been lifted, and for the first time, she felt utterly and completely free. As she looked around, the world she had entered seemed more real than anything she had ever known. Colors burst to life around her, but these weren't colors she had ever seen on Earth. Even the air itself felt alive, humming with a kind of music that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It wasn't music in the traditional sense. It was as if joy and love had taken on a sound, resonating through everything in this place. Then she saw him, her father, who had passed away when she was just a teenager, was walking toward her. He looked younger, vibrant, and healthy, radiating a light of his own. His smile was exactly as she remembered, but there was something more. An otherworldly glow, a purity that transcended anything she could describe. "Sarah," he said, his voice brimming with love and warmth, "you don't need to be afraid. He's waiting for you." She tried to respond, but before she could ask who he was or what her father meant, he reached out and took her hand. In that moment, a flood of understanding filled her soul. It was as if every unanswered question she had ever asked, about life, about death, about her father's absence, was answered in a single instant without words. The connection between them was overwhelming, yet deeply comforting. As Sarah tried to process what was happening, she became aware that this wasn't just an experience for her. She had been brought here for a reason, a purpose that would soon be revealed. Her journey was far from over. Her father stepped aside, and the radiant light surrounding her intensified. Then, out of that light, she saw him, Jesus. He wasn't like any image or depiction Sarah had ever seen. His presence was both deeply human and profoundly divine, radiating love and power that enveloped her completely. His eyes held everything: compassion, wisdom, and a depth that seemed to pierce straight into her soul. They saw not only who she was, but who she had been, and who she was meant to be. Overwhelmed, Sarah fell to her knees. It wasn't fear that drove her, but awe and humility. Being in his presence was unlike anything she had ever known. Jesus stepped closer, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. His voice was gentle yet commanding, carrying both peace and urgency. "Sarah," he said, "there is something you must see. Something my people need to know before I return." In an instant, the light around them shifted, and Jesus revealed 4 monumental events, each one more astonishing than the last. The first event, the great distraction. Sarah was shown a world consumed by technology. People everywhere were glued to their devices, phones, screens, and endless distractions. Families sat together but didn't speak. Friends prioritized social media likes over genuine connection. Even believers were swept up in the noise, losing sight of what truly mattered. Jesus turned to her, his expression filled with sorrow. "This is how the enemy works," he said. "He keeps them distracted, focused on the temporary, so they forget the eternal. Tell my people to wake up, to refocus their hearts and minds on me." The second event, the great deception. The vision shifted, and Sarah saw dazzling lights in the sky, captivating humanity. Beings of stunning beauty and charisma appeared, speaking of peace, unity, and enlightenment. Their words were mesmerizing, but beneath the surface, they were laced with lies. Even strong believers were drawn in, seduced by their promises. "These are not of me," Jesus warned. "They will mix truth with lies, leading many astray. Tell my people to stay rooted in my word, for it is the only foundation that cannot be shaken." The third event, the Great Awakening. Hope filled Sarah's heart as she witnessed waves of light spreading across the world. People turned back to God in droves. Families prayed together. Communities came alive with worship and repentance, and miracles abounded. Healings, deliverances, and lives transformed in an instant. Yet, this awakening came with a cost. Believers were mocked, attacked, and even killed for their faith. Despite the persecution, their joy was unshakable. "My spirit will move powerfully in these days," Jesus said, his voice steady. "But the cost of following me will be great. Tell them to stand firm, for the reward is eternal." The fourth event, the Great Return. The final vision left Sarah breathless. The sky split open, and Jesus appeared in unimaginable glory, surrounded by legions of angels. The entire world fell silent as every knee bowed and every tongue confessed that He is Lord. For some, it was a moment of awe and worship. For others, it was a moment of terror. "This is what awaits," Jesus said. "Tell them I am coming soon. Tell them to be ready, for no one knows the day or the hour." As the vision faded, Sarah found herself still kneeling before Him. Her heart was overflowing, her soul forever changed. What she had seen wasn't just for her, it was a message for the world, a call to wake up, to refocus, and to be ready for the return of the King. Overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had witnessed, Sarah knelt in awe as Jesus' gaze met hers. It felt as if time itself had paused, like the entire universe waited while He spoke directly to her. His words embedded themselves in her heart, a divine imprint she could never forget. "Sarah," He said, his tone gentle but filled with authority, "the world is entering a time unlike any it has known. You've seen what is to come, but remember this: I am always with you, and I am always with my people. My love is unchanging, and my promises are unbreakable. Even in the midst of trials and chaos, those who trust in me will find peace beyond understanding." As he spoke, the light around him grew warmer, enveloping her in a profound sense of comfort. His presence seemed to banish every fear, every doubt, but his next words carried weight. "There will be days of doubt, even for you," he continued, "but know this: I chose you for this message. not because you are perfect, but because you are willing. Trust in my strength, not your own. Remember, the message is not yours to carry alone. My Spirit will guide you and give you the words when the time comes." Before she could respond, he placed his hand over her heart. Instantly, she felt a rush of love so overwhelming that it brought tears to her eyes. It was as if every corner of her soul had been filled with his grace. "Tell my people," he said, his voice filled with compassion. "I see their struggles, their fears, and their failures. I am not distant from their pain. I am the God who heals, who restores, who makes all things new. They are never alone. I am always with them." As his hand lifted, the brilliance of the light began to shift. Sarah sensed the experience was nearing its end. "Now, Sarah," he said with gentle urgency, "it is time for you to go back. Your work is not finished. Tell them, I am coming soon." In an instant, the vivid colors, heavenly music, and overwhelming peace collapsed inward. She felt herself being pulled through a pinhole of light, and then a jolt, a sudden visceral return to her earthly body. The first sensation was pain. Her chest burned as if a fire had reignited within her, and her lungs heaved desperately, pulling in air like it was her first breath. As her vision cleared, Sarah saw the faces of paramedics hovering over her. Their expressions were a mix of shock and relief. "She's back," one of them said, their voice trembling. "We've got her back." Sarah could barely move or speak, but tears streamed down her face, not from pain, but from gratitude for the incredible experience she had just been through. She tried to convey her thanks, gripping the hand of a paramedic as if to share even a fraction of what she felt. In the days that followed, Sarah's recovery defied all expectations. Despite being struck by a car, her injuries were far less severe than anyone had anticipated. Doctors were baffled, calling her survival and rapid healing miraculous and unexplainable. But Sarah knew the truth. She had been spared and healed for a purpose. As she lay in her hospital bed, she replayed every moment of the encounter, her father's voice, Jesus' presence, and the visions of the events to come. It all became clearer with each passing day. She had been given a mission. No matter how difficult or unbelievable her story might seem, she knew she had to share it. Returning to normal life was anything but easy. Sarah wrestled with how to describe her experience to friends and family. How could she put into words something so profoundly otherworldly? Some listened with awe, moved by her conviction. Others looked at her with skepticism, doubting what they couldn't comprehend. But Sarah held on to Jesus' words. "Some will doubt, some will mock, but those with ears to hear will understand and prepare." And so she began to share her story, one conversation, one person at a time. The message wasn't just hers, it belonged to the world. She knew her journey had only just begun,